I now want to go to Aiden Quigley, who's with CQ Rollcall, and he's the reporter for Budget and Appropriations. Aiden, thanks so much for joining us at Open to Debate, and come on in with your question.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. So essentially, the 14th Amendment says that the validity of the United States debt shall not be questioned. What that means has been debated between legal scholars. There's one train of legal thought that says that means the president can, just continue to pay the president's debt even if they exceed the debt limit set by Congress. The other side argues that Congress has the power of the purse under the Constitution, and it's blatantly unconstitutional for the president to just ignore a co-equal branch of government's spending limit. Do you think that the president can, continue order the Treasury to continue to pay the bills even if that exceeds the debt limit? And part two is, do you think that this matter should be litigated, whether or not the current Congress decides to raise the debt ceiling?
Okay, so can the president do an end run around using the 14th Amendment, and should that battle be fought? So, Mark, why don't you take that one first?
Well, I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I can play one, though. So, and I've heard both sides from very smart constitutional lawyers, and they both make strong arguments. But I'm just a simple guy, economist, and I think, well, how can it be constitutional for the United States of America not to pay its debts? How can that be constitutional? That doesn't make any sense to me. So I would think at the end of the day, the Supreme Court would have to rule. It would rule in favor of the president if he invoked the 14th Amendment as a way to end the debt limit drama and continue to issue debt. Now, having said that, that's going to be very costly because as soon as he invokes the 14th Amendment, until the time the Supreme Court rules, and who knows when that's going to be, there's going to be complete chaos because bond investors are going to say, well, there's some probability the Supreme Court's going to say this is unconstitutional. Those bonds, what are they? Are they full faith and credit? I mean, what are those bonds? And they're not going to buy them. And that means you got to pay a much higher interest rate. And it could be serious. It could be busted bond auctions. And if you have a busted bond auction, then you're in a situation where you can't potentially even, roll over the debt that's rolling over and pay. You're going to lose money. You're going to actually have a bigger problem on your hands. And then, of course, who knows, how the Supreme Court's going to rule. It's a very difficult thing. So the only time I would use the 14th Amendment would be in break glass situation. We've breached, things are unraveling rapidly. Interest rates are soaring, stock prices are caving, layoffs are mounting. It is complete, utter chaos. And then the question is, which is the least bad course? It's a Hobson's choice. Which is the least bad? This complete chaos I'm observing, or the 14th Amendment? I'd go 14th Amendment. But, that's a pretty tough decision to make because it's not going to be painless. It's going to be very painful.
Parker, what is your take on the 14th Amendment end run possibility?
I am also not a constitutional lawyer, so this is somewhat outside my wheelhouse. I agree with Mark that there would be lots of chaos, particularly if this gets punted and tied up in the courts for a long time, and financial markets need to continue to function. But from my simple understanding of the actual text, I believe Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the authority to borrow against the credit of the United States. And the text in the 14th Amendment just says that the debts shall not be questioned. So, again, if the question is, should the government continue to repay its debts that have already been incurred? Well, yes, I don't think anyone is arguing otherwise. The question is what about anticipated obligations for which there has been no borrowing against the credit of the United States? Would that be valid? Can the president give these, create new authorizations to borrow against the credit of the United States when that power is clearly given to Congress? Again, I'll let the lawyers actually fight it out in the courts, but I don't think that the 14th Amendment covers debt that has yet to be issued.
Aiden, do you have a follow-up question?
I do. It's actually tied back to something from Parker's opening statement, which was essentially that the real debt limit is when markets no longer buy Treasury debt. and we need to get on a sustainable path. My question is, what would be a sustainable level of debt?
Anything where the ratio of debt to GDP is stable. And what exactly that ratio is a political question. I think debt held by the public has typically been in the 35 to 40% of GDP average after World War II. So returning back to something like that before where the debt ratio was before the 2008 financial crisis, I think that would be a good goal. The things to consider there in the trade-off are just that a lower level of debt has a lower level of interest, but you also have to run bigger surpluses for longer. You have to make the trade-offs about how to adjust the budget in the present in order to continue to drive the debt down to lower levels.